Hello everybody, and we are back for another My Hero Academia Season 5 episode review. So without further ado, let's talk about, and before we get into it, of course there are going to be spoilers, so before we get that out of the way, let's get into the episode. So we start off literally right where we left off with Endeavor waking up in the hospital, as we get to see more of what happened between him, Hawks, and Dobby. After the big Nomu fight. Dobby, he's actually set, he's about to attack both of them. Both of them are weak and injured. He's about to attack them before Mirko comes. She hops all the way over here and she comes to save the day. Dobby then talks to someone named Ujiko as some bluish, some purplish stuff comes out of his mouth as he manages to get away before he's able to be captured, but not before telling Endeavor that, they will eventually have some time to talk, and it's funny, it's weird because he does not call him Endeavor, he says Todoroki. Make sure to not die until then. He calls him by his full name, which I thought was weird, but also a little bit interesting. We then get to the secret meeting between Hawks and Dobby that was teased in the last episode. It turns out that the Nomu attack that happened was not supposed to go down that way, as it was originally supposed to go down the next day at some random warehouse and not in the middle of the city, especially with a villain, meaning the Nomu, as powerful as he was. But Dobby said that he just changed his mind, and that it was basically a Nomu performance test. And Dobby told Hawks to bring some random strong guy, and he wasn't expecting Endeavor at all, and he said that Endeavor wasn't really a good test for him. Dobby obviously does not trust Hawks completely, and he asks him, if you want to work with us, then how come no one died today? And Hawks says, you know what, I have an answer to that. And he's like, I can't, just because I'm working with you, doesn't mean I have to lose the trust of the people. Because as a hero, the more trust that he gets, the more information that he will get as well. He's saying, you gotta think of the big picture here. And he says he's doing all of this because of the League. Dobby then, proceeds to walk away, and he's saying, you know what, you can't meet the boss yet. You can't meet him at all yet, but don't worry, we'll be in touch. And as it turns out, through a flashback, if you're a flashback enthusiast, then you'll love this episode, because it turns out that Hawks is actually a double agent who has been asked to infiltrate the League of Villains to bring them down within. And we see Hawks at the hospital visiting Endeavor before it cuts away again to seeing Dobby as he's thinking about Snatch. And he's like, oh, Snatch, I remember him. He's the hero that he ended up being killed in Season 4. And as he's thinking about him, blood starts to come from his eyes, sort of to, I guess, simulate tears. As he says that he's thought about that moment a lot, so much so that he's gone crazy from it. After that, we then cut to Hawks and Endeavor, as Endeavor's been released from the hospital and he only had to stay there a couple of days. And now he has this wicked scar on the right side of his face, sort of like almost exactly like the one that Shoto has, just a little bit differently. And Endeavor slowly starts to put two and two together that the Nomu attack was not completely random. As we then get another flashback to see Hawks as a kid, and he has saved everyone from this accident, and this agency, they find him, and I thought it was a little bit, I guess you could say, endearing, considering that as a kid, in this flashback, he's holding an Endeavor doll, and now all these years later, he's actually working with Endeavor. I thought that was just like, imagine that, like, as a kid, you idolize a certain person, and now you get to work with him. That's what I thought. And this agency said that they'd support Hawks' whole family because they feel as though Hawks should be a hero. And I just thought that was like a cool, neat little moment to see Hawks, who idolized Endeavor as a kid, now finally get to working with him. We then cut to Endeavor returning home as Shoto ended up getting permission to come back home, for Endeavor's homecoming. And he's there with his family, and Aizawa is actually there outside, I guess, just to keep guard over them. Shoto looks at his dad, and he says that he's like, you have a bad scar on your face. As both Shoto and his other brother just look at him, just dead-eyed. They're just staring at him at this point. Natsu gets up to leave because, he's like, you know what, I can't do this. But Endeavor stops him, saying that if he has something that, he wants to say, that he should just say it. So Natsu is pissed because, well, as a kid, he never got to know Shoto, and him and his sister were always considered failures in the eyes of Endeavor. And, he's basically still mad at Endeavor for being a dick all his life and neglecting them. Endeavor merely says that he plans to face them all and atone for what he's done, but Natsu is naturally like, yeah, right, and he ends up leaving. Shoto says that this is the first time he's ever seen so much emotion come out of Natsu, and I guess you could say with his father that he truly does have a fire in his belly. Any fairy tale fans? Okay, it was a bad joke anyway. We then cut to news coverage of the big Endeavor fight as people are having their emotions and their opinions changed about Endeavor being the number one hero. Some people are being dicks and they're like, well, he's supposed to be the number one hero, but he had all this trouble facing this Nomu. But there are also actually some people that have become more supportive of Endeavor ever since that fight. Shoto then says that, he can't really forgive his father for what he did to his mother, but he wants to see how things go from here because he knows that something small can change a person. Endeavor does genuinely, you can tell that he feels bad for what he's done in the past, and he says that even if it's too late, he has to try to atone for what he's done and return to the future, as he's set to talk to Natsu. But just before that happens, we cut to UA, where we see Midoriya knocking the fuck out after a long day of training. And, well, what happens next, you'll see for yourself. As we see Deku in the dream state, we see Tashinori, who was, of course, All Might's mentor, right next to him, along with a bunch of other heroes. And it's revealed that he dreamt this and had seen these faces before, all the way back in the sports festival. And in this dream state, he can't really talk or walk as he has no feet, and the only thing that he can really do is see and use his right arm. And it turns out that each of these heroes are and have been the successors of All for One, and each of them slowly disappear. Why did I say slowly? Each of them all disappear at the same time as we see the two brothers who are tied for All for One. Now remember that story that All Might had said that it was between two brothers. And Deku freaks out because it turns out that one of the brothers is All for One. And his brother tells him that he can't allow him to do what All for One, whatever he wants to do. Because All for One's younger brother says that meta powers shouldn't be used for self-interest and that he's only thinking about himself. All for One brings two people before him who both need help in their lives, with one whose quirk has become a little bit too much for him to handle, and the other one with no quirk at all who's being taken advantage of by other people with quirks. And he manages to do the old switcheroo on both of them, and he asks them if he ever is in trouble, can he count on their help? All for One's brother, he sees completely right through his self-righteous bullshit. He tries to go after his brother, but is stopped by a guy that looks like Ryu from Ninja Gaiden. All for One then reveals that his brother was born without any meta powers at all, but despite that, he still loves his brother since he's the only family that he has left. It's through what happens next in this sequence that we can see how truly evil One for All really is, as his brother stands up against him. Deku is finally able to be seen once and for all, as All for One's brother, comes up to him saying that he wants to show him more, but that he's barely at 20% of, using his power. But also that he needs to be careful as they're past the singularity point, and that it'll be fine, and that he is not alone, and all of a sudden we're transported back to the ending of Season 4. With a glass shattering and Deku looking at his arm, and that is how the episode ends. And we also get the preview to the next episode, as it looks like Deku is going to have a talk with All Might about his dream, but we're also going to get, this special combat training with Class 1A against Class 1B, and there's a special participant that is going to be in the mix as well, and that is how this episode truly ends. So that's been it for this episode. It was a really good episode. I thought it was a better improvement than the first episode of the season. I assume that the episodes will get better as time goes on. I especially like that this was a very Todoroki heavy episode, and I just thought it was really nice and really well done, especially him trying to redeem himself and trying to atone for his sins that he's done in the past. And can't wait to see the next episode. Unfortunately, I will not be able to give you a review as I will be out of town. So do me a favor, let me know what you guys think about this episode in the comments section below. Make sure you guys hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I've been Samuel V, aka Excellent Anime Reviews, and I will see you all as soon as I can.